Hands down, one of the most traumatic periods of my life to date has been becoming a mom. Now, sure, it's beautiful being a new mom, having someone to care for, having someone to teach. It's all cute. And don't get me wrong, I feel so rewarded being a mother. However, being a mom and even being a wife has taught me that the ways that I thought, the ways that I used to behave, they don't work in this space. I have had to unlearn certain behaviors, certain thought patterns in order to be the best possible version that I could be as a wife and as a mom. The other day, I was in line at TJ Maxx or somewhere, and I heard a little girl talking. She had like a thick accent, couldn't be more than 4 years old. And the way that she pronounced some of the words, and when I heard her parents speaking, I understood that was, again, a learned behavior. When a baby is born, they don't come out with an accent. They don't come out with a certain way of speaking and even thinking. Certain things are learned behaviors. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about how important it is to unlearn certain behaviors in order to move in the direction that is best for you, or whatever direction is you're trying to go to next. And so, as I started to say in the intro, for me, becoming a mom, even becoming a wife, taught me that I had to unlearn certain patterns. I had to unlearn certain even expectations in order to be effective in my role as a mom and as a wife. Even certain routines that I had to change them. For example, I'm going to just say it. I am not particularly fond of getting prepared at night for the next day. I'm sorry, it's just not something that I like to do. It is something that my mom has tried to instill in me since I was a child, and I still struggle in that area because when I want to go to bed. However, I have learned that preparing the night before is what allows me to be most productive the next day. I also know that I feel more prepared when I prepare ahead of time, right? So for me, learning to adapt a routine at night, and I'm not perfect yet, but learning to adapt a routine at night has helped me tremendously. Getting the clothes ready. As a matter of fact, I try to get the clothes ready a week at a time because I have young children. I have 3 small toddlers and plus myself. And so if I don't get things rolling ahead of time, it could be super chaotic in the morning. I try to think about what's everybody going to eat over the week. Plan those things out, order groceries, get those things ready. Even myself, for a long time, just telling on myself, for a long time, I even thought about everybody else and didn't necessarily think about myself. But I had to change the way that I thought, change my routine so that I could honestly show up as the mom that I wanted to be, but also feel good about myself because I knew that I was nurturing and nourishing myself too. Why am I bringing all of this up? I am bringing this up because we are on a journey going to fulfill whatever it is that we desire in our heart to do and to pursue. And in order to do that effectively, we have to unlearn learned behaviors that no longer serve us in this season of our life. Because we are moving in a direction that we may be unfamiliar with, it's uncomfortable. We can't bring the same ideologies, the same behaviors into that season and expect to be in that season in totality. There are going to be shifts in behavior, shifts in mindset that have to take place in order to be effective in our next. And somewhere along the way, some of the behaviors that we have, we learned, right? We learned to procrastinate. How? We learned that when we procrastinate, we can still get things done at the last minute. Anybody in the room, a excellent person, when your back is against the wall, you can get that assignment done in 30 minutes. Now, you knew you had the assignment for 3 weeks, but you didn't do it. However, you did it in 30 minutes, turned it in by 11:59, and got an A on it. And that taught you, hey, I don't have to prepare ahead of time. I could procrastinate and wait to the last minute and still be effective. However, while that worked in that season, it doesn't necessarily work. Next requires preparation. My pastor always says preparation is the key to life. And I am understanding that more and more as I move in this season of my life, especially as a mom, especially as a wife, right? Being prepared. And most importantly, what I've learned is that being prepared helps me show up in the way that I desire to, giving myself space and room and time to show up as my best, to give my best, to nourish myself, to enjoy spending time with myself in the morning. That's what helps me be my best. And if I prepare ahead of time for everything else, then I get to put me first in the day. And so I don't know who need to hear that, but baby honey, go ahead and give yourself some time to prepare, because preparation is the key to life, and it is certainly necessary for this next season of your life. I was studying the word, and I want to share a couple of things with you as it relates to unlearning learned behavior. So what immediately came to mind for me was to look at the story of Saul, later Paul, and his journey on the road to Damascus, right? And if you're following along, this takes place in Acts chapter 9. So in this story, and I'm going to paraphrase it, you can read it on your own. What pretty much happens is Saul is on his way to find Christians to bring back to Jerusalem to persecute them, right? And he has full authority to do this. However, on his way, he is interrupted by the resurrected Jesus, who pretty much calls his name. He says, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you kicking against the goad? And Saul immediately falls, has reverence, and he ended up being blinded for 3 days. You can continue and read on. But now Saul, who has authority in one area of his life, is learning from Jesus that he is needed to be effective in the kingdom. Jesus pretty much tells him, I want you to work for me. So don't persecute, don't kick against the goad here. I want you to be effective in my kingdom. And so I think that that's so intriguing, because we have Saul, who understands authority. He understands what it's like to be effective in one area. And now he's being called in a different area, one where he used to persecute these people. Why is that important? Because the way that he was in one arena, he now has to unlearn those thoughts, unlearn those patterns, unlearn those ideas and ideals, and change his ways in order to be effective in ministry, in order to be effective in the kingdom of God. And we know Paul was highly effective, right? So if we fast forward, we know that Paul was highly effective, but that would not have happened had he not unlearned learned behaviors. Even if you read Acts chapter 9, you see that that his friends bring him to Damascus, and he is praying when Ananias comes to tell him the word that God had sent him to tell him. I thought that was intriguing, because he went from being a persecutor to a prayer warrior. Now, I need you to sit with that for a second, because here we have somebody who's persecuting Christians. Now automatically after this experience becoming a prayer warrior. Like the Bible says he prayeth. He was praying consistently. He was in that thing. And I just thought that was so interesting because that was such a sharp transformation in his life. That one encounter with Jesus changed his life so much that he went from being a persecutor to being a prayer warrior. And I can even say that in my own life. The things that I have experienced have taught me to make sharp transformation for the better. I'm not going to lie. I used to just be in church, go to church, and church used to be an event. But after having trauma and being traumatized in certain areas of my life, which I do talk about on this channel, you can go back and watch the video of my testimony. It taught me that I need to have a personal relationship with God. And so now church is not an event for me. It's an opportunity for me to come together with other believers. It's an opportunity for me to carve out time weekly to spend with God, as opposed to it just being an event, right? Just telling my truth. The name change from Saul to Paul indicates a change and a major transformation in Paul's life, right? Changed behaviors, changed mindset, changed person. He literally has a new name. And we know that names are associated with identity. And so just like how you and I are on a journey, we have to be mindful to not seek to have the same identity in this new space. It may require a new identity. It may require that you no longer think the same way, that you no longer behave the same way. Because let's think about it. If you were that person, you would not be where you are today. You would be over there, right? Over there is going to require a different mindset, a different person. And I believe that God builds the identity of the person in the messy middle. God builds the identity of who needs to show up for the end result where you're trying to go in the messy middle. So do not despise the day of small beginnings. Do not despise when you first get started, because you're starting a journey, and in the midst of the journey, you are changing. You are unlearning learned behaviors and changing your ways so that you become the person who receives wholeheartedly your next season. So if you've gotten this far in the video, I want you to take a moment and think about some learned behaviors that you have that you need to get rid of. They may be procrastination. It may be speaking negatively about yourself or about other people or about things that you want to do. It may be something as simple as, well, it's really not that simple, but how you manage your time, how you manage your money, how you manage other people. All of those things are indicators of who you are, and you need to assess, are they beneficial for where you're trying to go? And if the answer is no, then bring them to the Lord. Pray about them. Work on them. Faith without works is dead. So you have to actively work on becoming the better version of you now in the messy middle. That is all for today. I will see you in the next episode.